On this episode of Imagine, Create, Inspire.
If somebody is wanting to know how to elevate their game, would you have any advice?
Follow your passion.
Yeah.
There have been times over the years where it's like I see something's popular, something is getting a lot of attention, and being a commercial photographer, I can do a lot of different things. And it's like, well, I could shoot that. But if it's not something that you're connected to and you care about, it resonates to me. And the best work I've done is the work that I'm passionate about, that I'm close to, that I care about.
You are listening to Imagine, Create, Inspire, the podcast. Join host Bruce Andrews in conversations with creatives. Every artist has a story, and the struggle is real to stay inspired and in the flow. Join in the conversation by leaving us your comments, and thanks for listening.
Hey, welcome back, y'all, to our podcast. Imagine, Create, and Inspire. That's our motto. Imagine, Create, and Inspire. 3 words in a very deliberate sequential order. One that leads to the other. Imagination leads to creation. Creation leads to inspiration. And inspiration, when you properly apply it, produces hope. And hope is a commodity. Hope is fuel for the human soul. So therefore, kindling the imagination and getting into your creative self is like an essential process. So today with me, I got a creative. His name is Jerry Siegel. Jerry,
Hi,
welcome.
Bruce. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thanks for being had.
Yeah.
So Jerry is I'll just permit me to say, an internationally known photographer, photojournalist. Probably, if you know of him for pictures from the Black Belt, would you say?
Yeah, I've kind of bounced between. A lot of people know my work from the Black Belt. Grew up in Selma, so that's a big part of the documentary work I do. The other side of it is my first book was Facing South, and it's portraits of Southern artists. And so it depends on what people are interested in and where they happen to have seen the work. I've done 6 museum shows on the artist series, so a lot more people have seen that work. But in the area around here, more people know the Black Belt.
Yeah. So, we'll start with our gallery exhibit, work backwards.
Yeah.
We want to invite everybody down here to
Absolutely.
the EBSCO Fine Art Gallery in Columbiana, Alabama, to the Shelby County Art Center. Jerry's extraordinary works here. And so tell me tell the people what the title is and how you came up with it. Or did Paul come up with it?
Paul came up with the title, so we're going to get him to explain all that. He told me, I was thinking about that this morning, and I can't remember the genesis of it.
Yeah. So what's the
Black
title?
Belt color is what I call it.
Yeah.
Is what I call this body of work. And Black Belt color came from my friend Mary Ward Brown.
Right.
She's an important, well-known Alabama writer. Won the Penn Hemingway first, award for first fiction and a bunch of things. And she was a great friend. And she was one of the few people I've ever known that liked to actually ride around with me and take pictures. Because I drive and I stop and I spin around and I go back and I, pull on the side of the road. I stop in the middle of the road. And she just enjoyed that whole process, and we just enjoyed being together.
Yeah.
I think Mary would be 100 and something now.
You took some pretty remarkable photographs of her as well.
Yeah. And she's the one that came up with actually the name Black Belt color.
Yeah.
Because color speaks to the work I do is in color. But it also speaks to the timbre of, like when you're talking about the color of something, of music, or, it just has that kind of dual thing, and she kind of came up with that.
Would you call yourself a photojournalist?
I call myself a photographer working in the practice of documentary and portraiture.
Hey, I like that.
You know, and I really consider myself a portrait photographer, and I've given talks where I've talked about the Black Belt work actually being portraiture, because it's a portrait of a region, it's a portrait of a community, it's a portrait of a town. I did a series called 10 Jews Left about the temple in Selma, and so it's a temple, it's a portrait of that community.
10
trying
Jews
to hold
left.
on. 10 Jews left, because that's all that's left of the congregation. Now it's down to 3.
Wow.
When I worked on the project, there were 10. And when I was a kid, there were 100 people in the community. Selma's had 3 Jewish mayors. There were 100 families. It was a huge Jewish population in Selma. But it's dwindled down.
I had no
because,
idea.
People have gone on. People like my family, there were 4 kids. We all went off to college and didn't come back, and most people haven't gone back to Selma.
So you're from Selma, grew up in Selma.
4th generation Selma.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's all about portraiture,
So every
and that's-
portrait for you has a narrative.
Yeah,
That
it just
kind of thing.
it's a like I said, it's a portrait of a portrait can take on a lot of things, and I've always been interested in photographing people. And I started shooting around the black belt after my father died. I mean, I've always shot pictures when I was home, but I went back and spending more time there, and I noticed things were disappearing, and I was bored, and I bought this panorama camera, and you'll see some of those in the show.
Yeah.
And I shot some stuff, and a friend said, "Well, you have some really great stuff. You ought to pursue this."
And that was all film, right?
That was all film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just started going back and shooting with the panorama camera, and shot Washington Street Market and the cemetery and things that were important to me. And I knew some things like that were going to disappear. And then I went back. I wanted to take it further. I went back with my 8x10 camera and did a bunch of things that I thought were iconic, like the bridge, the temple, the old YMCA, things that, I knew I wanted to spend time with. Yeah. And then I just started, I love the 8x10, but it's such a laborious and slow process, and I like to move quicker,
So you think that the whole, I guess there's always a conversation to be had about digital versus film. So, does it affect your creative process at all?
No. To me, it's all about what's the final image. I've had arguments with, several people about that. It's like, don't judge me on whether it's digital, and I've had people say, oh, digital has no soul. It's not about the camera. What's the final print? Does it move you?
Yeah.
Does it not move you? If it, does it have something to say?
Right.
I miss my cameras. A buddy of mine said digital cameras have no soul.
Yeah.
And I think there's some truth to that, because you get a digital
camera itself.
The camera itself, because after 3-5 years,
it's kind of your point. The camera itself might have some intrinsic
But
value.
they don't hold the, you're a musician. You probably have some guitars that, or instruments that mean so much more to you that, you play them forever.
Yeah.
Digital cameras you don't hold on to forever, because the technology keeps changing. And as the technology changes, I have older digital cameras that still work, but I don't use them because there's something better now. But with the film cameras, I have Leicas and Hasselblads. I have an old 8x10 Deerdorf that are 40, 50 years old.
Yeah.
And they work as well as they did then.
So you still get them out now and then? And
the 8x10 Deerdorf I still like to
do you
get
find
out
that if you get that thing out, you got all that prep and set up, and so I guess that's where I'm going with this, and is that you have to contemplate what you're going to shoot,
right,
more than you would with the digital imagery.
Yeah,
where you just
absolutely.
shoot away.
Right.
Yeah.
Shooting without conscience. With 8x10, you look at it and you go, is it that good? Do I want to spend the time on it? With digital, it's like, I don't know, I'll shoot it.
Yeah.
Because you're not spending money, you're not burning a lot of time, but the image quality is incredible.
Right.
The image quality is there now.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about that, and then your ability to manipulate it with literally with mouse clicks, as long as you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you can experiment and not have to go back to a chemical bath or something like that.
I'm not that patient. I love taking pictures. I'm not a lot of artists are process driven.
Yeah.
And they love the dark room and different painters. I have a friend who's a painter, and he loves the process of all the different steps he goes through.
Yeah.
I like looking. I like seeing. I like connecting with people in place. And with the digital, I can do more of it quicker, and that's what I prefer.
Yeah.
Quick story, I was with my first gallery I had in 2005, and we were in my studio, and she's looking at work, and I had a Nikon in my hand, and it was the old days of film. And I kept focusing and clicking and shooting, and she finally said, "What are you doing? How much film is in there?" I said, "There's no film. I'm just focusing and framing,
Yeah.
And another artist that I photographed asked me the same thing, because I was shooting her in her studio, and I said, "I wish I had my camera when I was at your house 2 weeks ago, because you were sitting on the ottoman. You had your hands out. You were all dressed in black with the big picture window behind you, and it's a beautiful photo. And she said, "Do you always see like that? Do you always see in a frame?" It's like, pretty much.
Yeah.
I'm looking at you, and I'm seeing
You
you
trained
in a
yourself to-
frame now. You
Yeah.
know,
A lot
so
of-
you kind of, for me, I just kind of frame everything when I'm looking at it.
Yeah. So would you say, so I think people that you said shooting without a conscience, is that what you said a while ago?
That's just for digital, meaning
Yeah.
that, I remember the days of walking through the French Quarter in New Orleans with my Leica
Yeah.
and going, I got 4 rolls of film with me, so you have to be a little bit more judicious about
Yeah.
what you're shooting. But when you have a digital camera in a car that has, 1,000 images on it, you don't really have to think about how much you're shooting.
That's right. That's right.
So the beauty of it is to jump off this real quick is with digital, with the Leica, it was black and white, it's 400 speed tracks. And you can push it, but you push the whole roll. So you're limited to, how you can control. But with the digital, if I'm on Bourbon Street and I walk into a club and it's dark, I just run the ISO up, I change the color setting, and I can keep shooting. So it gives you a freedom to work that you don't have.
Yeah.
And a lot of people would say, well, the beauty of the film is you know that film so well, how. And I did all that, but I like to be able to go into different situations and not have to worry about having a change film, having different cameras. You just carry 2 or 3 cameras for different things.
Right. Yeah, that
It's
makes
just a way of
sense to me.
working.
Makes sense. That's an honest answer. A
Yeah.
lot of times people want to say something more elevated or artistic or like
That's not me.
or if they're genuine about it, then so
Yeah.
be it. But I mean, I feel like some people feel compelled to
Yeah.
create some kind of or illusion that's just not the
Nah.
truth. It's just like you had this new tool and
Right.
you learned how to incorporate it in
Right.
from your artistic eye, your point of view, that kind of thing.
Right.
With all that being said, visual artists, musicians, photographers, they all, at least from where I see it, they'll all maybe sometimes say, how do I get into the solo show thing? How do I get elevated as an artist? How do I, and so, there's one track of conversation that I would have with them is about, well, number one, network. It's all, I mean,
Absolutely.
no matter what your game is,
Right.
it's all about the network. And the good news is
Absolutely.
the vehicle is virtually free.
Yeah.
Whether it's at a small level,
Yeah.
or a national level, or whatever. I mean, social media platforms. Maybe that's the only good thing to be said about them.
Right.
That kind of thing. So, but maybe the thing that all those things have in common: music, songwriting included, and painting, and et cetera, and certainly photography, is that if you can't establish a body of work,
Right.
then you never have a signature
Right.
presence.
Right.
So can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, how'd you trip into that? Because you clearly have a body of work.
Well, the work is a given. I mean, you have to have the work to do the shows and get all
Inventory.
That. The network is as important. But, body of work, that's something I didn't understand. Cause now it feels like a long time. I've been in the art world since, I think my first show was 2005. So that's 17 years, which is a good amount of time. But I'm also 64 years old.
Yeah.
So most people, when they're 64, most artists have been doing it for 40 years.
Yeah.
But I was an advertising photographer for years and years and did corporate work, and I shot for the Atlanta Hawks. I did a lot of different things, but advertising was my job. So it took me a while to understand. I used to shoot every time I went to Selma, but it wasn't with any focus. So then I
So when
started
you were in
understand-
advertising photography, and you had an assignment to shoot a sports event or something like that,
Well,
a sporting.
I did annual reports. I did work for Coca-Cola. I did work for Bell South. I did a lot of product photography, shooting computer screens and computer chipboards and medical products. I did annual reports. I did a lot of different things in the commercial world. Shooting the basketball was something I did because all I ever wanted to be was 6'10" and play basketball.
Yeah, man, I can kind of.
And and I just was able through networking and connections with the guy I worked with finagled a pass one season for the Atlanta Hawks, and it turned into 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a pretty
cool
story.
So I sat on the floor and photographed the best of the NBA. It was...
Now, you really learned how to frame a shot then, I bet.
Well,
I mean,
it's weird. I mean, I wish I had my tools now. I was shooting with manual focus Nikon cameras with 400 speed film.
Kind of nerve-wracking, really, right?
You gotta focus quick. You gotta anticipate where the action is. Now the cameras have all this autofocus, and it can track with it, and you can shoot at ISO 2000, and the image still looks good.
Yeah.
So it was a lot. It's a lot harder than it is now. You still have to be good. I mean, all that it still takes. You have to have an eye and intuition about where the game's going.
Yeah. But a lot of that's fun. Translated to your current ability to frame a shot.
Yeah.
I mean, even though you have all these tools and that sort of thing.
Right. Well, it's all, for me, it's all intuition. I mean, it really is. It all feels, there's certain images that happen that I'm not sure if I saw it when it happened. The girl the picture I call Shooter.
Yeah.
Is an image that I did, and everybody liked it, and it's taken on different meaning because of the rebel flag, and I've had a lot of people ask me about that. And I remember the night at the fair, or in my mind, I remember seeing the girl, the gun, the braids, the color. You're soaking in at a county fair all the sounds and the smells. And I was focused on all the color and everything. I might have seen the
Tell
flag
me again
back
where the
there.
fair was. Was it
in Dallas County, in Selma. In Selma.
Yeah.
And I might have seen the flag, but it didn't register with me. It wasn't like, oh, here's a girl with a gun and a flag. That which has become kind of a thing now. That photo was in a show called Southbound and traveled to like 6 or 7 museums, and it was written about in almost every place because of the girl, the African American girl, and the gun and the flag, and people read stuff into it that I didn't see.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because the flag didn't mean as much then as it does now. That wasn't as much of a statement in 2007. But I didn't see that.
It's perspective and point of view always plays a part.
Right.
And I think that is always the role of the artist. I mean, just like in music, you may take a tack to make, I'm going to write a song to make a socio-political statement.
Yeah.
Or you might write a song that many people can read themselves into. It's simply a record of what happened.
Right. Well, I think my work's different because that was one of the 2 young girls asked me what my statement was. I was like, I'm just trying to tell a story. I'm not trying to make a statement. I never have. I've never done a show where I was trying to necessarily say something. I just go out and I shoot pictures. I respond to what I see. And I like the fact that each image will tell its own story, and I don't put big titles on them. That one's called Shooter, which is probably more of a title than most of them. Most of them is descriptive where it says painted bus with dog.
Yeah.
And everybody reads and, takes from it what they want.
Right. Now, that particular image, Shooter, is in the gallery now.
It is.
And so it's here until just before Thanksgiving. So everybody come on by the Shelby County Arts Center in Columbiana and see it, see the body of work. How many images do we have in there? It's like
62, I think.
62. So it's not a small scope of work.
No.
Many of them are those very large landscapes.
Yeah.
Can you? I love the stories behind them. Can you pick one of those landscape ones of your liking and give me the story behind it? Maybe the green barn or the deer heads or
Well, the green barn is interesting because that barn is known as Christenberry's barn because of William Christenberry, who was a important, well-known Southern photographer from Hale County, and his work he was known for going back to the same. He lived in D.C., worked at the Corcoran. And he would go back to the same places. So he shot that barn for years and years and years. And everybody knew that barn. It was kind of like an iconic image. And I never would shoot it because it's like this Christenberry's barn. How do you, shoot his barn? But the panorama is such a different format and takes on a whole different feel. And I was going through New Bern one day, and it was the green grass and the green trees and the green barn and the way that it frames up. It's still the green barn, but it takes on a different feel.
Right.
And people still recognize Chris and Barry's barn, but I feel like I didn't just do another picture of Chris and Barry's barn.
It's gorgeous, man.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Looks great hanging. And we got them grouped with thematic groups. I think it's very effective. Gallery
Paul
display.
Barrett did a great job of, laying it out and curating it and putting it together.
Yeah. Paul Barrett and George Dudley served us well.
And George hanging it, yeah.
They served us well.
They did a great job.
They served us well. So, sort of to wrap up, if there's young photographers or old photographers that are just getting their hands into it, because, I mean, it's kind of remarkable that you've established this body of work and got to some elevation in a mere, I'll just say a mere 17 years.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is wanting to know how to elevate their game, would you have any advice? I mean, let's just say let's just take it from somebody that, you hear so many people say, I love to shoot pictures, that kind of thing.
Follow your passion.
Yeah.
There have been times over the years where it's like I see something's popular, something is getting a lot of attention, and being a commercial photographer, I can do a lot of different things. And it's like, well, I could shoot that. But if it's not something that you're connected to and you care about, it resonates to me. And the best work I've done is the work that I'm passionate about, that I'm close to, that I care about.
Is that how, I mean, you saying that sparks me or makes me think about your book, which we have on site, Facing South. And so, there is a lot of characters in that book.
There are a lot of characters.
And you're passionate about the subject of these Southern artists.
Right.
I mean, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear, because I know some of those characters in there. If you got one story about that was cool about shooting one of those artists.
It was probably not one that you're thinking of. It was actually a guy named Enrique Alferez in New Orleans, and he was a sculptor. He was 94 when I photographed him.
94.
The project started as late career Southern artist. So I wanted, late career, mature artist, and Enrique was in New Orleans, and a gallery owner there connected me, Donna Perrette. She was Donna Perrette then at Gallery Simone Stern, and she connected me with a bunch of New Orleans artists, and Enrique was a really cool artist, and it was hard to get in touch with him. Luckily, his wife had gone to the foundry. He was a sculptor. She'd gone to the foundry in Mexico, and so he was alone for the weekend. It was a rainy Sunday morning, and I was able to go see him, and I spent 4 hours with him. And he had a deep Mexican accent still, and he was so nice, but he just, told the best stories. And he rode with Pancho Villa in the Mexican Revolution. Wow. He knew Diego Rivera. Yeah. And I said, you know Diego Rivera? I said, yeah, I know Rivera. He's a phony and a son of a bitch. He got a big hat, a pistola. He thinks he's part of the revolution. I don't do a Mexican accent, but...
You were talking about that earlier, with Philip, who's here producing today. At what age do you get to, because we all say as artists, if somebody will say, or being smart say, I would like to get to the point where, or they might say, I don't fear other people's opinions.
Right.
And I would like not to fear other people's opinions, but I think to some degree we all do. Right. We're trying to master it.
Yeah.
When you get to that age, whatever that magic age is, where you literally don't.
Right.
It's hilarious to talk to somebody like that.
Yeah. They've done everything they want to do. There's still stuff he was working on. Like I said, he's 94. His wife's at the foundry working on new pieces. Yeah. But he's successful. He's done it.
Yeah, he's not looking to impress anybody.
He's not trying to impress anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And it was a really rainy Sunday morning. His studio was an old church. I mean, it was just a great experience. But there've been a lot of, I can't pick any that are favorites.
Right.
Marshall Bolden in Mississippi was a portrait artist. So we really connected about making portraits, which was different than most because I don't connect with the artist side as much, but with him I really did. But there have been so many, Mose T and Thornton Dial and Lonnie Holly and Charlie Lucas that I've spent time with, the great,
they all got
vernacular
stories.
artists, and, they were different because you could just show up at their house.
Yeah.
You know, Charlie, I just showed up in Pink Lily. You know,
Yeah.
Mose T, I just knocked on his door. The other ones, you kind of go through a different sort of process to get to them. But that was the beauty of all the outside artists. I was really good friends with R.A. Miller up in Gainesville.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time up there. So, you know.
Man, that's beautiful.
It's the relationships. And I say that about, I collected a lot of folk art for a long time. And shooting the portraits and collecting the folk art, you know, it's really not about, it is about the photo and it's about the piece of art. But I always say I'm a collector of stories.
Yeah.
You know, it's the stories. I mean, I look at a piece of art and I love the piece of art that I got from R.A. Miller, but it also takes me back to the day I was with him.
There you
and
go.
The stories and the things that I learned. Same thing with being with Chris and Barry, you know, out in, you know, we were actually behind AUM, but it felt like we were in the country. We were in the woods. Being at Charlie at his place in Pink Lily, you know, those experiences are what I cherish more than the photo and the art.
Yeah, man. That's great, man. That's just a thematic wrap up to the, you know, this little bit of conversation. You know, like I said initially, you know, for me it's all about sequence. You know, at least that's what I'm used on. You know, it's like imagine, create, and inspire. It's 3 words in a very deliberate sequential order.
Great.
So the idea of sequence is once you initiate it, the next step is kind of like a catalyst.
Right.
You know, so the point being, most of us by default are in the other side of it. You know, like instead of imagination, creation, and inspiration, it's like maybe inflammation, polarization, and you know, something like that. But I'm always interested in how people initiate that creative sequence, you know, in themselves. And so your interest in people, you're interested in connecting with the past and the present and being in the moment and then recording that so you can revisit it, you know, and then in your case even share it is, I think, it makes life worthwhile, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, right on, man. I heard it's been said different ways. Your perspective, as in a sports world, I think they say your perspective drives performance. In other words, how you look at things is going to set your day and literally set your life.
Right.
So, you know, it's cool as photographers and artists that your perspective is a matter of record.
Right.
You know?
It is.
So I think it's super cool, man. Well, everybody needs to come down and check out the show.
Absolutely.
And check out Jerry's book. We'll have all the links below. If you Google Jerry Siegel Photographer.
Right.
Not the guy that did Superman that lost all his money. Not that guy. Which that's an interesting story, too.
It is an interesting story.
But Jerry still got some money.
No. Yeah. Come buy some prints.
So anyway, thanks, man, for coming to spend some time with us.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, brother.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. I enjoyed it.
Well, that's a wrap, man.
Thanks for listening to Imagine, Create, Inspire, the podcast. For more information on the Shelby County Arts Council, please visit www.shelbycountyartscouncil.com.